Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Joe Lane. I have a number of roles, but I pastor New Life Christian Center of Muskegon, and I am the community engagement specialist for Reese Schools. Those are the two primary things that I do, which allow me to basically step into people's lives and help support, guide, encourage, model, counsel, etc. So I just get the real cool opportunity to be able to be engaged and active in people's lives, not just in Muskegon, not just in Reese, but really all over the country. So it's a privilege to be able to do that. And most of my work is based on my own experience. In addition to that, obviously, I'm trauma informed. I have some training through Cornell University with therapeutic crisis interventions and things like that. So just a lot of my life experience connected to my own work experience of being an educator and being an administrator have collectively become what I get to do for our community.
A lot of times people in the community think I'm just one person. What kind of difference can I make? But how important is it, in your opinion, from the things you're involved in, that community support? Yeah,
and let me be clear, I can only speak from my context and my own experience. And so as I talk a lot from that experience. There's an old adage, the starfish wasn't saddened by one person throwing the starfish back in the water. So one person makes a difference. I think I'm privileged in my career that I've seen over 10,000 students. So as one person, I've seen 10,000 students. And even as recent as yesterday, I talked to one of my students who's nearly 40 years old, that again, we keep that connection. And I don't think it's the ministry of addition. I think it's the ministry of multiplication.
Amen to that.
So if I can take my one person and impart some of my one person into 1,000 people, then those 1,000 people can impart that into, and so it's just that model.
Yeah. Mental wellness in the community. Talk to me about the role that plays in the direction that what you do.
Yeah, so first of all, it's a stigma, right? So we don't want to talk about the fact that we're not mentally well. Even my own self, going to therapy was a thing that I was like, I don't need to, I shouldn't, until I started going and realizing the benefit of that, even for me. Mental wellness is not much different than physical wellness in the fact that everybody's sick somewhere. And so we like to think about mental health of I have to be so bad off, but mental health is just like physical health. I'm trying to stay better and get better. So whether I'm already in shape, I don't stop going to the gym. But I think in mental health, we like to think like, I don't need that, but we do. And so what happens is it's perpetuated across our communities, across our culture, especially in the African-American community, where we're like, well, yeah, we don't need to do that. We don't talk about our issues. And there's been this cycle of not talking about things that have kept things under rugs and kept things under wraps. And then those issues and those lapses in mental health have now been poured on the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And then we're looking 4 generations down the road, realizing, wow, there's so many things that we haven't addressed. And now we're way behind trying to address these things and trying to get up and keep up. And I see it, especially in schools, when I talk to young people, especially young men and young African-American men who don't have an outlet for some of the stuff that they're really struggling with. Then you give them the outlet and the opportunity, and even as a person who's not a mental health clinician, but to give them a space to talk, you can already start to see the healing.
Share a story, and I'm sure you have dozens, but think of one story about a success story where somebody was introduced to maybe that support and that stigma. You saw the stigma kind of go from, I can't go and say anything about that, and to, okay, I'm going to open up and engage now, and what happened?
Sure. I'm just trying to think of which story I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about one that may not seem like a success story in the long run, but considering today is his birthday, I'm going to talk about it. So my little brother, who was my play brother, who became my brother, had lots of trauma, had lots of stuff going on in his background. When we met, he was 8 years old, and then he was my drummer at church. And we just spent lots of time together. We were together every Saturday, every Sunday. I worked at the school that he went to, so we were together every day during school, and I was kind of his go-to person. And he had no place to give that outlet for the baggage and the stuff that was going on in his own house, right? So then we started to talk, and then I started to become a person that he could confide in and that he was comfortable with. So the end of the story isn't good. He ended up being murdered, and it was tragic. But that was such a better outcome than what would have and should have happened in his life based on the stuff that he went through. Before that happened, he became a really talented musician and graduated from high school because he was such a talented, gifted, brilliant genius of a kid. I mean, like not just in music, but in everything, like mathematically, articulation. People loved Lawrence. His name is Lawrence Leathers. And people loved Lawrence because of how creative and talented and articulate and savvy and charismatic he was. But a lot of that growth was because Lawrence and I had some similar experiences that I was able to say, look, man, this is how I jumped over that hurdle. And I didn't jump through that hurdle, but in order for you to get where you want to go, you got to play this game. You've got to go through this channel. You got to do this thing. And subsequently, Lawrence graduated from high school, went on to the Juilliard School of Music, left Juilliard because he was touring so much, and became a 2-time Grammy Award-winning drummer, traveled all over the world. And this one area of his life that he still didn't get a hold of was the tragedy. But really, all of these things, I remember when we were in Europe, and he flew me to Europe to go on tour with him. And he said, look at this. Who would have ever thought? And Pharrell Williams and Jill Scott and Gregory Porter's bands are coming to him saying, man, you're here, you're playing? And I'm like, they're talking about you. And he's like, yeah, this is just what I do. And, and then I think when you talk about community support, Lawrence is my brother. And everybody he introduced me to was, this is my brother who taught me how to play drums. So it was a cool thing. But out of that, when he came back home from Europe, he came to visit me in Muskegon, and he brought me a gift, and that gift was his Grammy. And so when you talk about community support and community connection, that's just what we get to be for one another. So again, back to your earlier question about what difference does one person make?
Sure.
One person makes a lot of difference. And yeah, there's dozens of those stories that I get the privilege of knowing, whether it's my choir students or even people from church. So it's just the privilege, and we can't resolve ourselves to believe that we don't matter enough to be able to impart into someone else.
Sure. The thing I like most about what you said there, it was impressed upon me that you did the bulk of that work without any letters behind your name, without any fancy degree. You just showed up and you were
present,
empathetic, you were present. There's a ministry in presence.
Yeah, letters don't bring change. Degrees don't impact your impact. That stuff is inconsequential. I have a master's degree, I have a BA. The reason I have those is so people can't take me out of spaces that I get to be in.
Absolutely.
Right? I heard Chris Edmond, I'm saying his name wrong, speak, and he said, my degree is only a certificate to emancipate me to be able to do the things that I need to be able to do. And so with a master's degree in education, I can talk in spaces that other people can't. Right. And I think not only can I, but I'm obligated and privileged to be able to do that. Yeah. And if I don't do that, woe unto me.
Yeah. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you.